Well, thank you very much for staying with us here on The Full View. So we go back to our top story, of course, focus on Parliament and the last-minute pullouts of several top members of the ANC. What does this all mean? We chat now to Professor Somadoda Fikeni, who joins us live from our Pretoria studios. Prof, a very good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Look, what do you make of Mabuza and Nomvula Mokonyane's, last-minute decline to go to Parliament?
I do think that it suggests behind-the-scenes negotiations, cajoling, arm twisting, and even persuasion on a number of fronts. The first one being the need for a deputy president to be a woman. The second one, the question raised around those figures who have been hogging news for all negative reporting with the allegations and the possibility that they'll spend greater time before the courts, before the commissions of inquiry. So those might have been some of the calculations. Of course, there is also a more sinister view which says those who are retreating either didn't like taking a position lesser than what they were occupying, some of them, and therefore going to Luthuli House is the preparation for all the kinds of the battles along the factional lines.
There was a lot of speculation, in the run-up to today in whether Nomvula Mokonjane, for example, Yobathabile Dlaminis, would make it on to the next cabinet of Cyril Ramaphosa. But I want to talk about the postponement, the swearing in of David Mabuza as a member of parliament. You did allude to it very slightly, but does this pave the way for President Cyril Ramaphosa to appoint a woman deputy president? We've heard the name of Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma being touted quite strongly.
I do think that that is the likely possibility. I am less inclined to the notion that he will wait for his name to be cleared, because legal processes tend to take many years. At the very least, if it is quick, it would be 2 years. During that time, you'd need somebody in that position of being deputy president. And especially at the time when it becomes clear that the streamlining of the cabinet and yet the increased expectation in terms of delivery will need a very strong presidency. For that reason, I do think that it opens up possibility of a woman being named as a deputy president.
Look, Cyril Ramaphosa, since the very beginning, has been talking about unifying the ANC. So if our speculation is right, that this then all paves the way for a woman deputy president with the name of Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, this could be seen by many as good for the so-called unity project of Cyril Ramaphosa, doesn't it?
Certainly, it would send a very strong signal that whatever choices he made, it was not based on any purging of those who might not have stood for him in Nasrec. At the same time, he will have made the point that those who are fingered and face all kinds of allegations will have been eliminated, even if they came from his camp or the other camp. So to that extent, it would be a very strong signal in terms of unity slate.
Now, Nomvula Mokonjane, of course, withdrawing, giving reasons, personal reasons. Do you think that this, in part, would have to do with perhaps the same line of what we're hearing, the reasons that David Mabuza is giving, of wanting to, of course, face some of these allegations of bringing the party into disrepute with the Integrity Commission? Now, you have Nomvula Mokonjane, who, of course, was fingered in the Bosasa scandal. Do you buy the reasons that she has given of her withdrawing for these personal reasons?
Well, I do think that if that is the case, the withdrawal is based on these allegations, it would have taken a lot of pressure, because no one would have gone through the process of accepting the nomination, put the party in such a dilemma up to the last minute, and even accept a new role of being the chairperson or the chair of chairs within Parliament without behind-the-scenes struggles where there might not have been an easy process of agreement.
So if one is to believe, then I guess, Prof, that, David Mabuza was being used as a scapegoat for others to follow suit. We saw David Mabuza, then Nomvula Mokonyane. And I guess, with Francis Hurd, my colleague, speaking to Bulelani Philip in Parliament just a few moments ago, you saw Bathabile Dlamini being sworn in there. Many are asking or even wondering if she will make the cut in Ramaphosa's cabinet. We don't seem to have her following suit at this stage, facing all the allegations that she has faced, of course, in the past.
We must also remember that placing people in parliament is not necessarily a presidential prerogative when the branches have put them there, especially when what they face in the main are allegations rather than very specific criminality of a serious kind. So to that extent, as the president of the Women's League, but also taking into account that if you offload most of these persons or figures or leaders who have known throughout their lives being deployed by the ANC, the practical thing is that they may not have any other source of income to go forward. And that in itself might cause a bit of resentment within the ranks. Where the president has a scope is in the choosing of the cabinet, especially for the people who might have faced those allegations. But don't discount the possibility that even those who are withdrawing, it doesn't take them out from bargaining to say, if then I'm not going to be there, who from within the ranks that we're comfortable with are you putting forward?
I have to ask, a lot is speculation at this stage, but I'd really like your view on this. With from the ANC statement that we've seen, of course, Nomvula Mokonyane will be reassigned to Luthuli House. Speculation about David Mabuza as well, and some saying within the ranks that this might even be a ploy for a war to be waged against Cyril Ramaphosa from inside Luthuli House. We know the factions that exist within Luthuli House, within the African National Congress. Is there anything to read in between some of that which is being said in the public domain at this stage?
I do think that there may be such a possibility by default as well as by design, wherein those who are aggrieved, who may not have been closer to Ramaphosa or supported him going to Nasrec, end up in Luthuli House. If they are in that space, the temptation to mobilize according to their constituency would not be irresistible. But at the same time, I do think that it should not be simpler to think that Mabuza, by going back there, is part of that particular faction, precisely because when he seemed to jump ship at the last minute with Mpumalanga, which cost Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma the presidency, some are still resentful, some still have reservations. Therefore, it should not be assumed that he would be going there to be part of a well-arranged, team there. But the last point I want to make there, even if they were to try and dislodge the current leadership, if ANC were to go to another rupture in terms of divisions, then this will be the last government of the ANC, frankly speaking. So the prize they would have been looking for, it's unlikely to be achieved should ANC be forced into a percentage below 50%.
All right, I want to come to the other swearing-ins as well. The Gauteng legislature, we saw members of the Gauteng legislature also being sworn in today. Of course, Premier Makura walking a tightrope, of course, with the ANC's slim 50.9% majority. Talk us through the politics of that, because obviously, in a situation like that, as crucial as Gauteng is for the African National Congress, David Makura is certainly walking a very tightrope there.
Certainly, it will be very difficult for him to govern without getting the smaller parties to assist, because in practical terms, it means ANC members would have to be present in every sitting, which has not always been the case, because should they be absent, then you have a challenge there of ANC not having the majority. And secondly, they would have to field their best team, because even if they are 50+1, if they do have people who are weaker, then opposition will always get the better of them in the committees, in the debates and so forth, and that can be positive for him. But the other side to this, when he was being voted into the position itself, it would suggest that EFF voted with the DA, which means there might be some arrangement accruing from what was at Tshwane. That in itself may shape the politics within the province itself. And this is an interesting one, because it would look like EFF is open to have personal relationship and chemistries with certain leaders of the DA, but not necessarily the national leadership, where they might have fallen out of favor, or with some of the regional leaders.
We've already heard, I was speaking to a colleague of mine, Natasha Perry, a bit earlier on, and she did indicate when she spoke to Mandisa Mashiko of the EFF that she implied that that didn't necessarily mean that they were in bed with the Democratic Alliance, but one of the threats that the EFF has already made is to make it uncomfortable for David Makhura on some of the sticklers that included things like, the e-tolls, which have been a pain in the side of the African National Congress. Are we expecting to see a lot of that unfold in the Gauteng legislature with the thin majority that the African National Congress does have within the legislature?
Well, I do think that it is going to be a difficult one for the ANC, because if you have such a slim majority, you may have a rough ride, and this rough ride might have very little to do with what the balance of forces are right now, more than the preparation for the local government elections, where the battles are to weaken in order to demonstrate that Party A cannot govern. But if that was the case, though, the net loser will be the country, will be the province, because the GDP, close to 40% of the country, is in Gauteng. Should partisanship be so strong that the parties do not realize how serious the crisis the country is facing, and that no one party can do it, and not even parties without business or business without labor and the civil society can make it.
Prof Somadoda Fikeni, thank you very much for your time. Political analyst, Professor Somadoda Fikeni, joining us live from the SABC studios in Pretoria. Thanks for your time. Francis, you've got the markets and the rand strengthening on the backdrop of all that drama in Parliament today?